Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to episode 29 of Let's Talk Meditation with Heather Nieves. Today is a special episode because I have the Jennifer Dragonette-Jacobsen here, and we will be talking about being seen and heard through podcasting. Jennifer helped me set up my podcast at the beginning of this year. She has such a beautiful soul, and I'm just excited, especially I'm talking about being seen. I'm talking about taking up space. And so I know a lot of the listeners are struggling with this. And I've had a lot of people reach out to me about having a podcast and having questions about it, but I am not the expert. You are. So I'm just so excited for us to talk about all the things today. So welcome, Jennifer, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor, and I'm just excited to be here.
I didn't introduce myself for your listeners. So I do work as a women's empowerment coach. I'm also the founder of I Love Me Yoga, and I love helping women learn to love themselves and step into their highest potential through movement, meditation, and mirror work so that we can just be seen, be heard, be more of ourselves, and make more money. And I am grateful to you for helping me realize the value of podcasting because let's face it, we know I love to talk, but not everybody wants to hear what we have to say. So I think the beauty of podcasting is people are seeking out our messaging. So the people that are listening here, I don't have to worry, oh, am I talking too much? Because they're literally here to hear me talk. So it's really exciting that I can step into and own the gift of loving to talk, really get specific with what I'm talking about, be in my power and confidence saying, yes, I love to talk. Let me talk about meditation. Let me talk about confidence. Let me talk about taking up space. And we get to do that together today. So you do a lot of amazing things. Will you do an introduction?
Oh, and see, this is one of the things I think we need to start thinking a little bit more about is our introduction. Because so many people want to say, yeah, I have a master's degree in this. I have these 7 certificates. I am a producer, like I do all these things. But it's so hard for me to want to say that because that's not who I am. So when people ask me to introduce myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm a podcast producer, I'm a podcast strategist, but I'm also a land mermaid, a person that wants to have fun, a person that you can't get out of the sea. So my introduction isn't your standard elevator pitch. I'm the land mermaid, connector of humans, empower of people's stories. And that's kind of my introduction now because, you know, we do things differently over in my land.
I love it. I love it so much. And it changes, right? Once we recognize who we are and who we aren't anymore, and who we are and how we introduce ourselves evolves because we evolve. So the way I introduce myself has changed on this show. It has changed as I've been showing up online for over 6 years. And that's beautiful, right? Some people think, oh, they're like in an identity crisis. Yet the truth is, we're just evolving and realizing and shedding and just stepping into more of who we are. So let's so you're in California, and I typically talk to moms, but we know that you are a dog mom, a horse mom, right? And you we know each other just from being in healing communities and doing work together with one another. But I guess, where did this all begin? How long have you been podcasting for?
So it all began, what was it? I guess it was 2020, that time before the time. Um, in February, I woke up one morning. First off, I'm a manifesting generator. I'm a 6'3". So I'm a martyr and a role model. That is not a fun thing to try on, but hey, I got this. And I woke up one morning and I was like, I'm going to be a podcaster. Mind you, I had no clue. I had my iPhone, the iPhone headset that came with it, and that was it. That day, I actually birthed my podcast. I did everything I could in that, really fast, figure it out kind of way. And I launched it in one day. Highly don't recommend that, but it can be done. And at that moment, I was seeking something. So my New Year's resolution, the last resolution I've ever made in 2020 was to make friends in real life. So that didn't happen, but it gave me a podcast instead. So I think that everything gets divinely downloaded. And if we take that action, that's when it happens. So that's how podcasting birthed for me. And then it turned into me just having conversations, getting to know people. I created a beautiful community. Like I said, I'm a connector of humans. So I created this beautiful community. And one day I was in this other person's community in their network, and they're like, "Do you have a podcast program?" And I was like, "Sure." I did not. There was nothing even in the mind, but in 72 hours, I sold out said program that had not even been a thought of mine until she asked. So it's kind of, again, those divine downloads as a manifesting generator. I can act on them quickly. So it's knowing yourself.
So, those of you that don't follow human design, Jennifer is magnetizing this and she's deciding inside of her body, is this a hell yes or is this a no? Right. And I think it's so beautiful is what I'm hearing is that you got an idea and you trusted that you were co-creating with the universe and you allowed yourself to be guided by these ideas because it felt good and right in your body. So you just simply move forward with them rather than questioning them, over analyzing them. You didn't allow space for self doubt. You didn't allow space to convince yourself out of it, to, you know, explore, is this logical? You simply just decided to move forward because you had been showing up online for a time. So this wasn't just
Oh, yeah.
overnight, right? You and I have been showing up online for years. And I like to say that to people because you have a successful podcast, but it didn't happen between yesterday and today. And yes, you launched right away. So you can take your time, plan it out, or you can just launch it and trust that it will be refined over time. And I think that's what I love about what you teach is that you don't say, oh, you must do it my way or you must do it this way. Here's the ways that you can do it. What are you aligned with?
Yeah. I call it like, remember the Choose Your Adventure books?
Mm-hmm.
Back when it's choose your adventure for podcasting. Like there's different routes you can take. And I do believe everyone should have some sort of a podcast strategy if you're in business, but that doesn't mean you have to be a host. It means you have to follow those nudges. And I truly believe once, you gave me that reading for human design, I was like, oh, this all makes sense now. There was permission to be myself. And that's like for me, I teach podcasting for your soul. Because yeah, it's a business strategy. It brings in my revenue. However, it was my confidence. It was that, as my friend Colleen says, she's like, you are someone's life preserver. Your story is someone's life preserver. So if someone's out there drowning, feeling alone, sharing your voice from your heart, if you're doing it from your heart, you're unsinkable.
And I think that's so beautiful. And I think that's it just a reminder we are human. We are not just robots. And you give yourself permission to follow the path of trial and error. And then once you've mastered the things, then it's like, oh, well, don't do this because I failed at it. But now follow this example of what I am succeeding at. Because I've seen you pivot many, many times over the years. And I think it's so beautiful because you're like, oh, I'm going to go back to this. Nope, just kidding, going back to this. Oh, this is the new thing. Oh, this is what I've mastered. I'm renaming my podcast. I'm going to have two podcasts. Oh, now I'm merging them. I'm going to have one podcast. And we're giggling, but that's the path, right? And it's permission to be human, permission to not know the end, because none of us know the end. We can have a goal, or we can just simply be led by that initial idea and trust that everything will work out.
Yeah.
I think the fact that, podcasting can be a very masculine industry, a very hustle industry. And I see the way that you teach and the way that you lead and the way that your podcast is run is that there's this beautiful feminine flow, that there's this permission for individuality, encouraging you to show up and be yourself. So what is the name of your podcast, by the way? Because I want everyone to listen to your podcast.
So my main podcast, the one we started back in 2020, is Feed Your Business with Love, because I truly believe that success starts from within. And that is really creating a tsunami of self-love in your life and business. And by tsunami, I mean that the people that hang out with me are not ripple makers. We are change makers. We are tsunami builders, where we think of a tsunami as something negative. But if you think about it, it's like a tsunami comes in over your life, it washes everything out, and you get to choose what goes back. And that's the power of that. And then my other one is podcasting for your soul. And it's having a soul led business running based off of podcasting and your story, knowing that question of who am I? Who do I serve? Like, is this really me? Because that was one of the biggest questions I ever struggled with was who am I? It led to, deep meditations. If I had a meditation teacher in Costa Rica ask me, who am I? I couldn't answer the question. I couldn't even put my name on a page. And I think that between those two podcasts, there's a lot of really empowerment of your story matters. Like we all think we have to have these crazy trauma stories, right? Or these crazy success stories. No, your micro stories still impact.
Mm. I appreciate you saying that because we so oftentimes compare ourselves to others and hesitate to launch our business or share our ideas because life isn't hard enough or it's not exciting enough or it's just not enough, right? Because of what you just explained. So I think that's so beautiful because it's true. I mean, we you inspire me and I inspire you, and we continue to impact others around us through our stories. So thank you for sharing that. How has meditation impacted your business and your podcasting, since this is a meditation podcast?
So for me, meditation has changed everything. When I sat on that floor in Costa Rica and could not answer that question, I realized how important meditation was. As a, somebody who's always running, like I said, I launch things in one day, I'll rebuild, repivot, all the things. What I was afraid of was slowing down. I was afraid to be in those thoughts. I was afraid to take that deep breath where my brain got that moment to think. So if I was constantly running at something, whether that was my health and going, completely orthorexic or, like all the things, like I constantly was running. Meditation was so scary, incredibly scary. But what I realized was to embrace it. So I started with like very short meditations. Then I ended up taking I think it was the I Love Me virtual classes. And I was like, hey, okay, if I can combine movement with meditation, my brain isn't quite as crazy. I haven't gone quite, because I was going into these deep depressive states in meditation. It was putting me down this spiral and, like led to some pretty scary times in my life. However, now it's everything. I wake up every morning and I do a meditation. I am still not to where quiet meditation works for me. I need music or guided, but it allows my brain to just kind of settle. It brings my nervous system down,
Mm.
which actually makes me more productive. And I do them twice a day. I do them before sleep and when I wake up in the morning. And I really find that meditation allows you to find yourself. Because when you're busy, you're busy being someone else's busy.
Mm.
You're
Mhm.
following a guru who tells you, for health, you have to do this. For your business, you have to do that. And you never sit down to let it feel in your body.
Mhm.
Meditation changed everything. Breath work changed everything. Sometimes as simple like you do on your podcast a lot. Let's take 3 deep breaths. And as you let it out, it's just so amazing. And the one thing that I've learned from you is letting it out with an audible sigh. That's a great way to be seen and heard, because we
Mhm.
always want to be so quiet with everything. But like you said, let it be weird. And it's
Yeah.
so much fun and it's empowering and it allows you to be, okay, this is the weird noise I make. Who cares? And I love that. So again, I truly believe meditation, whatever your meditation looks like, whether that's I've picked up playing drums. Now I meditate playing drums.
And I love all that you're sharing because it's evidence that if you don't align with one style of meditation, there is so much more out there for us. And it doesn't have to be sit in silence. For me, I do like to challenge myself and work towards that, but it's not what I go to all the time. And that's me and my experience. But you and your experience is not that. And that's okay. We're both still meditators. And it's supporting us exactly how it needs to. I wanted to interrupt, but I'm practicing not interrupting. And this is just me being open and honest. And, this is us. But you said about it felt so good to give yourself permission to make sound when you're meditating. This morning, I was singing. And by the way, if you struggle to be heard or struggle to use your voice, you got to do some singing. You got to clear out your throat chakra. And so singing also just raises my vibration and it feels really, really, really good in my body. And I hadn't done it in a while. So I was driving to go teach a yoga class this morning and I was singing a song by Rising Appalachia and they howled in the song and I let it out and it like startled me. And I was like, ooh, that also felt really, really good. How often do I hold this back? Right? Like there's so much more in me that desires to come out. And so in the work that I do, I also expand my embodiment, but it's a beautiful example of how it feels so good to just let it out and give ourselves permission to be weird, to be heard, to make sounds, to not be proper, to not be conditioned and silent. And a lot of the reasons why a lot of people are not launching their businesses, launching their podcasts is because of this societal conditioning of we got to be good, we got to be quiet, we have to be proper, we shouldn't swear, and this way of being that we've been conditioned into. So thank you for saying those things.
Yeah, and those primal sounds I don't know where I heard primal sounds, but that's what I love. I love primal sounds. And if you're not comfortable with it, I go for hikes and I howl at the trees. I scream at the trees. And it's like they love me anyways. And I get to just be weird. But as a kid, I was told that's too loud because I had a real powerful scream. I mean, don't go to amusement park with me if you want to hear the next day. It's loud. But that's who I am, and it's embodying, like you said, those little things, like, you let it out and it felt good. It startled you, but I bet it empowered you all at the same time.
Mhm. Exactly. I was wondering what your advice is for someone listening that is thinking about starting a podcast but hasn't yet. So, what is your advice for the beginner?
Stop thinking, start doing. Um, well, it really you have to listen to yourself. Like we were talking about before, there's different kinds of people. Like there's the me's out there that are like, I want to do it in one day. I want to launch messy. I want to do that. Then there's the people that are like, I have to have everything planned out. But the thing that is going to move the needle forward in your podcast is getting super clear. And it all does. Like it all goes back to self-love and knowing yourself. If you aren't clear and you are throwing darts, don't get me wrong, I'm the pivoting queen. I pivot like there's no tomorrow. Ask me what kind of coach I've been for the last 6 years. Man, the laundry list is huge. But what it really came down to was sitting again in meditation and asking, who am I? What do I want my business to look like? What do I want my podcast to look like? The nice thing about podcasting is you can pivot a little bit easier and not confuse as much as it is on social media. It's a lot more forgiving of a platform. But you're also in someone's ear, although they're still multitasking, they're not multitasking visually.
Mm,
So
that's such a
you're
good point.
thinking about how you want to hit someone in their heart center. So for me, podcasting for me isn't just a business tool. It's a way to connect heart to heart
Mhm.
through your words. And that's why I'm different than most strategists. It's like most strategists would say, okay, get your foundation down. What's your topic? What's your core this? Yeah, we need those foundations. But the very first thing is what's inside you, what really wants to come out. I
I
love your podcast itself because it's a variety. It's not just here's a solo episode, here's this. You throw in meditations, you throw things from your heart.
Thank you. I found a lot of clarity working with you. And so know that if sitting and trying to write it out on your own is too hard or too much, please reach out to Jennifer and get a clarity, a strategy session, or do one of her programs or hire her if it's all just too much through her production company. For me, I've been doing things online for years. So there's things I know how to do, but there's also things I don't know how to do. And there was things I was willing to do. And then there's things that we just don't want to spend time doing anymore. And so I love that working with you helped me to decide that. And it may change in a year or two or in 6 months of what I'm willing to spend my time doing, because those things used to be hard for me, but someone showed me how to do them. Like, oh, it really isn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. I got this. And once you showed me, we need a little structure in setting up the podcast. Like, let's brainstorm together. And then I had 3 pages of notes. And then I, released my episodes and gave them titles. And then I, on my own, was like, all right, this is how I'm going to organize the podcast. I'm going to challenge myself and not do all interviews. I know a lot of amazing people, but I desire to lead meditation. And it would actually be very easy for me to do all meditations. But I said, all right, let me do a solo episode. Okay, I'm going to do an interview. All right, I'm going to do another solo episode. So I'm like four in 1 month, one per week. I'm really challenging myself. But then it's like, wow, Jennifer helped me to set this up. And now I'm challenging myself. Some people choose to continue working with you, but for me, it was a foundation that I needed. And it's like, okay. And then I reach out to you from time to time when I am stuck. And then you remind me of all the things that we talked about. And so I appreciate the work that you do, not only, hey, the how-tos in the technology realm of podcasting, but also the setup of it, but also the coaching, the giving yourself permission to be seen and heard, and the inner workings, because I think, like you said, that's left out in some of the offerings out there.
Yeah, and that's the core of it. I really truly believe, and I think that's what my gift is that don't just come in and get strategy. You do get some of that. It doesn't have to be hard, but you get me as the healer also. I call it it's a podcast as a healing modality to me, because it really does, if you use it correctly, there is a healing aspect to sharing your voice in this way, to sharing your story in this way, to knowing that it's evergreen, that you didn't just work for an hour to create something that if the algorithm likes you, you're lucky you get 24 hours.
I'll tell you what, because you said it's very healing. I'll go back and listen to my own episodes. I'm like, damn, that was good. That was inspiring. Oh, maybe I should follow that advice, because today wasn't a day that I was living that messaging. Like, I think I went back and listened to the title, Become or Be Who You Say You Want to Be. And then I'll listen to my own meditations, because why not? That's me. That's my own subconscious. That's my own voice. So you're right, it is healing. And maybe not everybody does what I do as far as listening to my own podcasting. And rather than criticizing or critiquing, I mean, the first one was painful to listen to, but I just let it be. I got this, I let it suck. And I didn't delete it. And I just let my first episode sucks, at least in my point of view. And then I listened to it again. I was like, it's really not that bad. We're hardest on ourselves. So is that good advice? Just let your first one or few suck.
So just know that the first 10 are your learning for every single person, whether that is someone who's in the, top 0.0000% podcasters in the world. go back and listen to their first 10 episodes. That's where you're learning. That's where you're starting to get rid of the conditioning of the perfection and the having to show up a certain way and live a certain life. And you start to shed that highlight reel. So, of course, you sound silly. Of course, the audio's up and down. You haven't figured it out yet. But again, there's so many things that's one of the things that bothers me the most about this industry is people online make it seem like it's so hard. There are tools out there that can auto tune and do all the things for you. It doesn't have to be hard. I started my podcast that reached number 52 in the top self-love podcasts with a headset and literally the plug-in headset that you get with your iPhone.
Yeah,
That's what I
I'm
started my
using it
podcast
today.
with. I mean, but that's what I started with. And I still ranked. So it doesn't have to be as hard and as complicated as everybody tells you.
Well, there's some
It
platforms
just has
that
to
let
be
you
solo.
upload, like you don't even have to use a laptop. You can upload from your cell phone. That's literally, like we all have phones, so we can just simply use it as a tool to support us and begin. And then I know you
Yeah.
talk about like you can start on one platform, but then you can move to another one and you can change the name. So I think thank you for giving so many examples of it. You don't have to have it fully complete the moment you want to launch. There need to be some details that you should know, or at least, think through, get clarity, but you don't have to know it all immediately. And it's okay for it to shift and evolve and grow. And you can shut it down and you can restart a new one. And just permission to honor that idea.
Yeah.
And give yourself permission to be seen, be heard. I heard this from a mentor and it hit me home, and I speak it often, is when I get an idea, when something has moved me, when it has impacted my life, I have found that it rises up strong in me. And I'm like, I have to tell others about this because it is my sacred responsibility. Right. And you have such a beautiful toolbox. And I appreciate how you have made it your sacred responsibility to help us, but not one way,
Mhm.
but there's many ways. And then when we treat it as something important and sacred and it matters, and just trust the path, and we are guided, right? Our life is a spiritual journey.
Yep.
And
So is your business.
yes. Whether you consider yourself a spiritual entrepreneur or not.
Oh yeah, because your soul is going into it, regardless of whether you're spiritual or not. Your soul is part of your business. So yeah,
Podcasting for your
it's
soul. Exactly.
right.
Exactly. So those were my questions for today. Is there anything else you'd like to add to today's conversation about being seen and heard through podcasting?
I really think that if you're considering podcasting, try it. Try it on for size, try the pants on, see if you like them. If you're not ready to be a host, see if you can guest on somebody's podcast, but make sure that podcast aligns with something, because there's nothing worse than getting 1,000 of the same cookie cutter pitches that don't make sense for the show. If you actually truly like a show you're listening to and you feel you could add value, pitch to them. Practice pitching. That's a way of being seen too. And most of us podcasters, most of us, regardless of the size of our show, are like, yeah, we'd love to have you if you align. So I just say, just practice pitching. Just practice pitching. You need to pitch someplace, practice pitching. You can come to my community. You can pitch all day, every day on my community. Like, just practice showing up for yourself and saying yes to the things that bring you joy.
And I love that you said practice, because that's life, right? Everything that we do, we practice being seen and heard. We practice showing up as podcasters. We practice as entrepreneurs. We practice as parents. We practice as friends. We practice our meditation. We practice our yoga, right? All of it's just practice. That's how we grow. That's how we improve. That's how we feel confident in that skill or in whatever it is that we're doing. So it's just, I think, and I like that word too, because there's less pressure, We don't have
Mhm.
to master it because mastery doesn't come that moment, right? And honestly, even like Buddhists, they'll say like, I'm not a guru. I'm not your master. I am not your God. Like this is all a practice for me. I'm still a beginner,
Yeah.
right? And so we are all just practicing. So what just came to mind was if someone's been practicing podcasting for a while, but they want to help their show grow or they want to begin monetizing it, is that something that you do as well?
Oh yeah, so that's my main jam is I love helping podcasters grow. I have what I call called a podcast CPR. So it's clarity, people, and CP revenue. I'm like, had to think about that for a minute. My brain stopped. But it's a free audit and we look at your podcast because although I am all speak from your heart, share from your heart, podcasting through your soul, there is some divine masculine structure that you have to step into. And that's where a lot of us, because I work with a lot of spiritual entrepreneurs, that's my jam is it's the spirituality world. We forget about that divine masculine and we sometimes have to pull ourselves out of the flow, step back and look at those foundations. And in that foundations, we look at, are you really clear? Who are really your people? Are you talking to them? And how do we want to monetize? How do we want that revenue? So that's really my main, like, I love to work with people, whether people work with me or not. Those are my favorite things to do. I love to do podcast CPRs.
Well, we'll have to talk. All right, Jennifer. Well, thank you so much for your time today. We will put in the show notes how to stay in touch with Jennifer, her website, her social media, her podcasts, since she is primarily seen and heard on podcasting versus social media, but also her website. And I just want to invite you, if this podcast episode spoke to you, give yourself permission, go be seen, go be heard, launch the podcast, whether it's, on your own or with Jennifer or with someone else, and listen to my last episode. It is an empowering AF meditation that will just help you get into the energy of being seen and heard. So thank you so much for your time today, Jennifer, and everyone. We will talk next week on Let's Talk Meditation with Heather Nieves.